John Green. I think he's very, very talented. He's the sort of author I would aspire to be like. I also like Brent Hartinger. I think he's written some very good YA books. And I have a lot of friends in the business. I read a lot of their books, too.
Being a school librarian, how do you think that influenced your writing, either through observing the students or seeing what they like to read? Do you think that played a part in your writing?
It's kind of funny. I've been a librarian at a kindergarten through second grade school for the past several years, so not so much. But before that, I was a librarian at a junior high, and I found a lot of kids, when I try to get them to read something, they'd say, I don't like to read. All the books I've read are boring. And I think that was mostly because they'd been reading the wrong books. And I would always tell them there are books out there that you will enjoy. It's just a matter of finding them and giving them a chance.
What led you to writing, and more specifically, the YA genre?
Well, I was living in the country of Mexico and just kind of bumming around down there, and was teaching school, and the Mexican school year goes all the way through July, so I needed something to fill my time. And I thought, what the heck, American in Mexico, I'll just write a book. And they always say, write what you know. And I thought, what do I know? I know what it's like to be an awkward teenager, so that's what I wrote my first book about, playing with matches.
What were some of your favorite books as a teenager?
Well, when I was a teenager, back in the late 80s, early 90s, there was not a lot of what you call YA literature, and what did exist was either very superficial, Sweet Valley High sort of thing, or very, very preachy. It was like, don't take drugs, don't always listen to your parents, that sort of thing. So I never read books that were for teenagers. I read a lot of fiction for adults. Catch-22, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I was really into anything that was anti-authority at the time.
Well, that's still young adult, I think, as long as it has that message.
Yeah.
Young adult books are often censored. They're normally the first ones to be taken off library shelves. Do you ever feel like you're self-censoring, or if you do have mature themes, which I know some of your books do you ever worry about how that's going to be received, especially Almost Perfect, but the kind of subjects that are in that book?
Censorship is interesting. In the 8 years I've been a librarian, I've only had one parent officially challenge a book, which was Fallen Angels by Walter D. Myers. I find that recently, most school systems, when a book is challenged, will just tell the parent, if you don't want your kid to read this book, they don't have to read the book. But there's not a lot of actually yanking the books off the shelves. As opposed to, in reference to self-censorship, I've kind of been watching my language more since I wrote Playing with Matches. Not because I delude myself into thinking teenagers don't use strong language. It's just that I would hate for somebody to not read my book or not let their kids read my book just because I used a lot of four-letter words. So I do watch that a little bit. As for the theme of Almost Perfect, I have not heard of anybody saying they don't approve of the book because of the theme, and though several people said they didn't like the way it was written, and that's the worst kind of criticism, is the ones that are maybe valid. But though other authors I've talked to write about similar subjects say they have had their books challenged and challenged quite frequently, and I think that's just a matter of how well known the author is.
Do you think there was a point where you felt you'd become a successful author, or could you describe at all the process between finishing your first manuscript to kind of sending it out to publishers to actually getting it published?
Sure. Well, I started writing when I was down in Mexico just for something to take up the time. I came back to the U.S. This was when I was writing Playing with Matches. It was just a hobby, something I did for fun, something I could tell people, yeah, I'm writing a book. But I never really thought anything would ever come of it. I never thought it would actually be published. So when I finished it, I thought, well, I put all this time into it, I might as well see what some publishers think. So after I'd gone through it with my writers group for a bit, got their opinion, and had to pretty much rewrite the whole thing from scratch, I sent it out to a bunch of publishers, a bunch of agents, and every single one of them sent me a form letter back saying, not even remotely interested. It was just a form letter. It didn't even have my name on it. That was kind of disheartening, but I kept up with it because I thought I put all this effort into this. I don't want to just say, okay, I'm done with it. But I was pretty much about to put Playing with Matches on a shelf and move on to a different book when the very, very last place I could think to send it, which was a contest sponsored by Delacorte Press, I sent that off for the contest, and a editor in New York City sent me an email saying, hey, you didn't win, but I like what I read, and would you be willing to rewrite this entire book based on some vague suggestions I have, and when you're done, I'll look at it again. She didn't promise me a contract, didn't promise me anything other than that she would look at it again, which in the publishing game is a pretty big deal. So I rewrote the whole thing again, sent it back to her. She called me and said, this is very much improved. Would you rewrite it again? And I said, okay, I will rewrite it again. And she said, that's what I wanted to hear. I will send you a contract. So that's how I got in the door there. That was how I managed to get a publisher interested.
Very interesting. Do you have a favorite book out of the two of your own, or do you wish that you go back and alter anything about the two?
There are minor things I would like to alter, but for the most part, I'm pretty happy with the way they turned out. The minor things are just continuity errors or ways I could have explained things better. I don't really have a favorite out of those two books. I mean, I only have two books published, so it's hard to choose a favorite, though I guess always be a special place in my heart for Playing with Matches, the first one.
On your website, you keep a pretty regularly updated blog, and from what I've seen, young adult authors normally keep a blog updated more than maybe adult fiction writers. Do you think that's important to have a way for teenage readers to kind of connect to the authors? Do you enjoy keeping your blog?
I certainly do enjoy keeping my blog, and I think I could do a lot better job of it. John Green, who I mentioned earlier, does a very good job. He is constantly updating. When I was a teenager, if you wanted to contact an author, you would have to write to the publisher, who would forward it to the author, and if the author wanted to write back to you, they would have to, send you a long-handed letter, and obviously that was pretty slow going. Nowadays, if you would like to contact an author, you can write to them immediately, which is something I found very gratifying when people take the time to just say, hey, I read your book and I enjoyed it. That is just very touching. So yeah, I think people today, especially teenagers who are used to being so connected, so wired with the world, I think they do like having that personal one-on-one contact with the author.
Do you have any other information that you want to add? Any question that you wish I'd asked that you want to tell people?
Putting me on the spot there. The thing I always say whenever I talk to a group of teenagers is, I never wanted to be a writer. I never wrote anything creatively until I was 25. If somebody had asked me in high school, are you interested in writing for fun? I would have said, heck no, I'm not going to write for fun. Am I going to do math for fun? But like anything, like playing a sport, like playing a musical instrument, it takes practice, and the more you do it, the better you get. And I just really consider that 10 wasted years I wasn't writing, because if I had started in high school, I would be that much better, that much more talented, that much more established. So if you ever think of writing as something you'd like to do, keep with it, get feedback from your peers, and don't let anybody tell you that it's never going to happen, because if it happened to me, it certainly can happen to anyone.